Back in 2010, Forrest Fenn began the thrill of the chase. And in 2011, my partner, Samuel Smith, entered into the community. My partner, Samuel Smith, along with another partner that he had about a year later, were the first people to discover how to use the poem to reveal the phrase try the wheel. A couple of years later, in 2016, I ended up being partnered with Sam Smith, and Sam Smith and I discussed this on Dal Dietzel's website and also on Jenny's Kyle Mysterious Writing. And then in 2018, we made a video about it. Our goal was to do that, to give out enough information where we wouldn't give out the full solve, but we would give enough in order for us to locate a partner that lived in Wyoming so that they could go boots on the ground for us. Sam was boots on the ground, I believe, for 1 or 2 weeks. And I was boots on the ground a couple of times in Wyoming. And basically, we couldn't afford to go anymore. So we were trying to find a partner. That was the whole reason why we put this out there. So this solution that we have requires no ciphers, no backstory, no books, not even a thrill of the chase. Absolutely no research is needed outside of a map of the historical location and the poem itself. You don't have to even know who Forrest Fenn is. It's a very straightforward solution, and the poem itself actually tells you where warm water's halt, making this solve completely unique out of anything that I've ever seen in the chase before. And the final location is the most spiritual place anywhere in the Rockies within the United States for all Plains Indian tribes within the USA. It is where we believe Forrest Fenn wanted to die. So let me briefly discuss how this solution works. If you want more information, at the end, there'll be a link to the full solution video if you want to go ahead and watch it. As I have gone alone in there, notice what we have here. First of all, as means while. Have gone means that he went and he never returned. And we're going in there. And with my treasures bold. With means by means of or accompanying. And of course, treasures is being enhanced. It's bold. It stands out. These two lines are indicating the steps that Forrest Fenn took. This and that. He did this and that. I can keep my secret where. Can means that he has the ability to do something. What he's keeping, of course, is where, the location. His secret where. Secret is an adjective. And hint of riches new and old. So here he's hinting at riches new and old. The second two lines in this stanza are basically telling us what the steps above enabled him to do. We can see clearly that where is obviously in there, and hint of riches new and old is clearly referring back to treasures bold. The hint is right there. As I have done this and this, I was able to do this and this. And they're referring back to each other. Where is he keeping his secret? Where? In there. Where's the hint of riches new old? Right here. Treasures bold. Begin it where warm water salt. Okay, so the first question we have is what is it? Well, it is referring to what he did in the first two lines. He wants us to begin doing what he did. In other words, we're following in his footsteps. Now, we don't have a treasure to hide like he did, but what we do have is the title, the word treasures. So, what we're going to do is we're going to go alone in there with treasures bold. And after we do that, it's going to reveal his secret where. The first letter that we need is T. We're going to take the T and halt. Next line says, and take it in the canyon down. So we need an R, but there is no R in this line. So we're going down into the canyon. So far, we took one step. Now, we do have an R here. Matter of fact, we have two R's here, but we can't use them because he's telling us that where we are is near. In other words, the place that we're looking for is not far, meaning it's near, but it's too far to walk to. So we can't take the R from this line because we didn't go far enough. We're close enough to walk. So we go down to the next line. Put in below the home of Brown. We do have an R here, and it's in the word Brown, but he's telling us to put in below the Homa Brown. We're not moving this line. So basically, we need to put in to a place where we can walk from. So he's kind of hinting at the fact here that you can't get from where warm water's halt to the location, which appears to be somewhere in the middle of the canyon downstream, but we can't walk to there. So what he wants us to do is drive or use some other means of transportation to put in below what he's referring to as the Homa Brown, which is clearly the first being described by the first sentence here. And we're going to put in below all of that. From there, it's no place for it to meet. So we need an R. We can see that there are three R's here. There's one in the word from, one in the word there, and one in the word for. But we're supposed to go in there. Remember, stanza one said he took it in there. So we're going to take the second R, which is the one that is in there. So we're now in there and we're below the Homa Brown. Looks good so far. We're following on the steps just perfectly. We got the T, we got the R, we need the E. The end is ever drawing nigh. Now, we just got done reading, from there, it is no place for the meek. Well, one place that's no place for the meek is the end. And also, you'll notice that we have a bunch of E's, but we're going to take the second E, not the E in the, but the E in end. Now, notice that there's a semicolon after this line. Keep that in mind. These two lines, because he uses the word it is. From there, it is no place for the meek. The end is ever drawing nigh. Those two lines are actually describing the Homa Brown because essentially it's referring back to it, where we began it. So imagine that we hopped in our car and we left the wheel and we headed down below the Homa Brown. Okay, now we're looking for a point at which we need to turn off to go back up the canyon. What's going to be in our future? This is describing the intersection that we're looking for. This is where we came from. So we need an A now because we have the TRE. We got an A and there's an A in paddle. But if you read the line, it says there will be no paddle up your creek. So if there is no paddle up our creek, we can't take the A. There is no paddle. So we do what the previous line said, which is drawing nigh. We're going to draw it left. So we slide that line to the left so that there are no letters in the treasure column. We have TRE and there's no letters here. So we still need our A. So we get to the next line. If there's no paddle up our creek, all we're going to have is heavy loads. We're not going to go to water high. And we also know here that will be going up a creek. He's telling us there will. This there is not referring to location. It's saying there will. He's telling you what's going to be in your future. And remember, we're after the semicolon here. So think of this as an intersection. First two lines is where we came from. Next two lines tell us where we're going to. So what is your creek? Well, he's giving you a big hint there. If it's our creek, that means that we've been following a creek. It is a creek. So it begins probably in a basin where the headwaters of the creek are, and then the creek goes in the canyon down, not far, but too far to walk, somewhere in the middle of the canyon. He's calling at the Homa Brown. We're going to put him below it. Down here, he's referring to where we came from and where we're going to. Very simple, very straightforward. Okay, so we needed an S. There's only one S in this line. We're going to take it from the word wise. If you have been wise and found the blaze. So we're going to take that S. Look quickly down. Your quest to cease. Again, we're taking the second you, not the first one in quickly, but the one in your. I want you to remember what we said drawing nigh after the semicolon, because it's going to come into play. It's saying that the end is ever drawing nigh. And we have end spelled horizontally and end spelled vertically. So look at what's happening to treasure. There's our R, there's our E, and there's our S being drawn right to the right-hand side of heavy loads towards water high. We've now revealed the word treasures, TREASURE, S, and it's drawing nigh, wrapped around the word end. Okay, remember the poem is a map. If you take a look at what we have here, we do have a blaze. We have and the end vertically. There it is right there. That is our blaze. Now, if we read only the words that overlap the blaze, and we're also going to stop when we reach the end because that is where we cease. We've gone through all 9 clues here now. We're done. We should have the treasure chest at this point. We don't because we're not boots on the ground. So, just to reiterate, so far we have done everything the poem told us to do. We went in there with the treasures and we're going to reveal his secret. So, what is the secret? If we read only the words that overlap the blaze and we stop where it ceases, in other words, don't read beyond the end. And we're going to read it vertically because he says to look quickly down on the blaze. So, we've got try the wheel, treasure, end. We stop at the blaze. We're ending there. So try the wheel, treasures, end. Now notice that we have a gap here. So it's technically, you can read it as try the wheel, treasures, END. And that becomes important when you're up at the wheel because the wheel has cairns labeled E and D. It's also got A, B, and C, and F and O. But anyway, there is E and D cairn, and that's going to become important. So we've taken it in there. We revealed the secret where. Now, the reason why we have to look quickly down, now that we know we're dealing with the wheel, or we're going to know as soon as we finish the poem, you'll notice eventually that the wheel has an E cairn, the E and D. The D represents where Warmwater's halt. The E represents the solstice sunrise. So we're basically, the sun is going to be our blaze at this point, which makes sense. That would explain why you need to look quickly down because when the sun rises, of course, it's going to quickly start moving southwest. Now, obviously, we don't need to be there during the solstice because there's a map on site that shows you the exact radial that the sun's going to come from. And you know what time it's going to come from because you know when the solstice sunrise is. So all you have to do is go to a topographical map and draw a line at the E and the O currents where the sunrise is straight down. And it actually ends up intersecting the point at which we put in, and it goes right over the campsite where he hid the treasure chest. So the sunrise is our blaze at this point. Now we'll take a look at the rest of the poem. So the next 2 lines are, but tarry scant with marvel gaze, just take the chest and go in peace. Obviously, we're not boots on the ground yet. We don't have the treasure chest. But he's giving us more information here because we know that we're following the solstice sun radial, but we're going to find the place where it butts up with tarry scant near a marvel gaze. And a place where you would tarry scant, of course, is where you would go for a short stay, okay? Like a parking bench, a campsite, something like that. And it's got to be near a marvel gaze. And as you're going to see, we actually have that situation right where the sun goes over. So all we need to do is find out where the sun intersects the blaze at campsite number 9. And then we draw a perpendicular line, and that leads you right to the treasure chest, which is on the opposite side of the creek. You'll see that soon. Now, stanza 5 is basically giving us a rhetorical question. So, why is it that I must go and leave my trove for all to seek? Now, it's rhetorical because the only reason why he's doing that is so that he can interject the answers that they're going to help us solve the information that are in the stanzas that are above. We got as above, so below. So these two basically come into play to help solve the poem when your boots on the ground. Because all we did here is we revealed try the wheel. If you look at what the hints are telling you down here, he's telling us a couple of things. He's giving us knowledge. Now he says the answers that I already know. Know is the verb, but the noun version of know is knowledge. Okay. So he's going to provide you with the knowledge, which in turn is going to make you wise when your boots on the ground because these two are going to give you the knowledge that explained everything that I just showed you up here. So stanza 5, he's telling us a bunch of things. He's telling us how he left his trove. In other words, his trove in this case would be treasures. He left them as breadcrumbs, and he left them for all to seek. Okay, so all we need to do is go below the home of Brown, and he's leading us the way with his treasures bold, basically. And he's also telling us how he had gone, because he's saying, why is it that I must go? Well, the only place that I went anywhere is up here. So he's explaining to you as I have gone, but now he's telling you why he went alone in there. Okay. And he gives you the answer is, I've done it, tired, and now I'm weak. So one way you could look at, like I said above, clearly we can't walk. So we're driving to the place that we put in. And he's kind of hinting at it down here because he's saying, I've done it, tired. So this part where it says begin it, where warm water, salt, and take it into kind of down, not far, but too far to walk. Okay. He did all of that. He drove. He did it tired. But it's more than just tired. It's also hinting at the destination. Because when you're tired and weak, you're exhausted. And that's a hint to the medicine wheel itself, because that's where people go to seek spiritual guidance. And it's also a hint that we're going to a place to rest. Tarry scant, you're going to rest for a certain amount of time that is located near a marble gaze. So the reason why he's going up the creek to heavy loads of water high is because he wanted to rest at the Five Springs campsite, basically, in our case. And as I said, you would figure all that out when you refer to a map that's on location and a map of the Bighorn Forest itself. Now, stanza 6 basically comes into play the first time you're reading the poem because he's describing everything that I just did. We listened to the direction and we operated on the poem in order to reveal his secret where. Now, all we need to do is go boots on the ground and apply the effort, which is going to be worth the cold. The cold is the bronze treasure. You could see that through the rhyme scheme. Cold and gold rhyme with bold and old, just like seek and weak rhyme with meek and creek. We also have another hint that we're brave, which is synonymous with bold. So we got to be brave by taking the treasures in there, which is the bold thing that he did up here when he left the breadcrumbs. And we also know that we're going to be in the woods. So in there, when we go in there, boots on the ground, we had better be in the wood. So all of that is referring back. These two stanzas are so below. They're referring back to give us the hints that we need when we're below the ground. As above is referring to the stars at the medicine wheel. Because when you're at the medicine wheel, all of these clues are basically leading you clockwise around the wheel to the solstice sunrise. And then you're putting your back to the sun, pointing right down to where the put in is. Then you drive to the put in, you drive up, park your car, get out, follow the trail to the falls, stop at campsite number 9, and then you go right across the creek, and bam, there's the treasure chest. Very straightforward. There's no missing spaces. I didn't take any letters out. I didn't remove any punctuation. There are no ciphers. All we're doing here is reading the poem and doing exactly what it says. Where is there? Well, in there is here. That's the only two places there is referring to a location. Here and here. And the same thing with the word where. Where is what he's keeping secret. Okay. The only other place you see where is where we're going to begin it. So where you're going to begin it is at the wheel. Everything is very straightforward. That wraps up pretty much the poem. That's how we found out the wheel. Now, this is really all I need to show you, but I'm going to go ahead and show you some screenshots and some drone footage, just so that you can get a look at the area and see what we do when we're boots on the ground. But I am positive that this is where the treasure chest was. And as I've said, the poem itself is telling me where to begin it. And Forrest Fenn always said that the most important thing is where warm water salt. If you don't know where to begin it, You have nothing. And he also said, begin it where warm waters halt, somewhere north of Santa Fe in the Rocky Mountains, is not enough information to find out where warm waters halt. He said you need all the clues, which goes back to T.S. Eliot, where you're going to arrive at the place where you begin and know it for the very first time. Well, we have that exact situation here. Now, I want to briefly show you a couple of images. I'm not going to get into any detail here, really, because all the information is in the complete sob that I'll link at the end. But this is basically the map of all of the currents that's at the wheel. There's like three maps. This is one of them. This is Dr. Eady's map. It describes all of these cairns. They all represent stars. Aldebaran, which is Taurus the bull. This represents the solstice sunrise. Rigel, which is the toe of Orion. And then we have Sirius, which is the dog star. That's when Sirius rises. And then we got Fomalhaut rises, which is sitting right below Aquarius. Okay. And like I said, we have the summer solstice sunrise. And then if you stood at sea and looked across here, you would see the summer solstice sunset. So in the images that I'm going to show you right now, whenever I refer to the sun, what I'm doing is you're standing here and you're looking across the center at the time of the solstice sunrise. But just like he did in looking for Lewis and Clark, we're going to put our back to the sun. Okay, that's mountain man wisdom, and we're going to look the opposite direction. So those lines that I drew are drawn on a topographical map accurately, representing the exact radial of where the sun goes. So everything is very precise. This is an image that I took from an external application where I basically placed myself at the wheel as if I was observing the stars rise. This is the decairn. This is the area of the sky known as the celestial sea. Here's the Milky Way. Here's Fomalhaut. Here's Aquarius. You can see he's spilling his water out of the urn and it goes into the fish's mouth. This is the fish's mouth. This is Fomalhaut, what it would actually look like in the sky. And again, this is the Milky Way. This is the brightest star in the southern hemisphere that you would see from the north. This is also one of the navigation stars that they would use in the southern hemisphere. This is one of the first hearing aids. I just want to show that. That is a bighorn. It's actually from a ram, a bighorn sheep, and it's hollowed out, and that's what they used as a hearing device back in the day before they had this other device. That's a more advanced version of the device, if you want to call it that. I believe that's from the 1800s, and that's the ear trumpet. Okay, that is what they use as a hearing device after they advanced beyond using the horn of a ram. So just think about that when you're saying, so hear me all, listen good. That's yet another hint to the bighorn. This, of course, is at the wheel. And here we got the blue line, which is pointing down the Five Springs Basin. That's where warm water salts, that's where the headwaters are for Five Springs Creek. That goes into Five Springs Canyon, over Five Springs waterfalls, through the Five Springs campsite, and down across the intersection of Five Springs Campground Road, and then right into Rainbow Canyon. That is where we would turn off to go up to the campsite to put in below the Homa Brown. The Homa Brown is the entire protected area at this historical location, which includes the mountain itself. It's roughly a little over 4,000 acres, and it goes right up to the National Forest border. And the actual campsite is on BLM land, which is managed by the Department of the Interior, which is essentially who Sarah Davis worked for. They don't have any rangers on site in BLM land because BLM land it doesn't have infrastructure to handle large amounts of tourists. Like a national park is built to handle millions of tourists. And the same thing with national forests, they always have a staff. National parks actually have a gated entrance where you got to pay to get in. BLM land, you don't do anything. It's one of the least restricted areas. When they do have an incident arise, they'll send the nearest ranger over to the BLM land to quote unquote manage it. And Sarah Davis was in charge of the Northwest area. So she would have been the one that would have went here to investigate for the Department of Interior when they had the Zoom call in August of 2020, which was less than a month after Forrest Fenn announced that it was in the state of Wyoming. So as soon as they got wind of that, you could be sure they contacted the Department of Interior to make sure that it was not in a place where you couldn't have put it. It's not legal to put it in a national park, for example. If it would be there, Forrest Fenn would have got fined. It's a misdemeanor crime. Also, if Jack would have found it there, Jack is required by law to bring it to the park superintendent. None of that ever happened. There's no record of that. Sarah Davis is not the park superintendent. That's a whole another group of people. All she is the chief ranger. And the reason why she was investigating it, because you can see we have dating all the way back to 2013, a bunch of email correspondence back and forth between Forrest Fenn and various national parks because they were concerned over all of the rescues and deaths that they were having. And they were trying to get Forrest to call off the chase. That would also explain why it took Sarah Davis 2 weeks to investigate the place that Jack and Forrest described to them back in August of 2020. Because if it was in the park, she could have been anywhere in that park within 2 hours. To get here, we're over 100 miles away. She would have had to travel. Okay. And that would take a couple of weeks to go and investigate the place. And like I said, she never said it was in Yellowstone National Park. She said that it was on land managed by the Department of Interior, which is basically her boss. That's the top. The top that umbrella covers everything from national parks to BLM land to Indian land and even reclamation areas, and so on and so forth. Pretty much all government land is handled by the Department of the Interior, which is what she said. And then she also said that the land where it is does not have the infrastructure to handle large amounts of tourists. Well, Yellowstone can handle millions of tourists. There is nobody at Five Springs Campground. It's just a government run BLM campground with no staff. They don't have a gate. So that would be an example of unmanaged areas. They don't have any staff there. Like when you go to Yellowstone, it's loaded with staff. They even have their own rescue teams and rangers and to police the area. They got hotels, they got everything there to manage people. And there's nothing on BLM land. This, of course, is like I said, you're standing at E and you're looking across O. The sun would rise over in this direction. But remember, we're going to put our back to it. So instead of me pointing the line this way, I basically inverted it and went down this way. And this is that line drawn accurately on a topographical map. And you can see that this is where you would turn in. So you would drive from the parking lot. Incidentally, this is block 23, row 4 is exactly where the parking lot is below Medicine Mountain Peak. So you would park there. But basically, you would drive because you can't walk down here. You would have to walk over a waterfall. And this is actually a gigantic 300 or 400-foot cliff. There's 2,000 feet of elevation change, over 2,000 feet when you get down to here. So he had you drive to the point where you put in, and then you take it up and you park here and you follow the trail. So this is the sun. That's an exact line. It's not just a line that I drew in a random location. Here's Five Springs Basin. Here's Five Springs Creek. And it goes into Five Springs Canyon over here, over Five Springs Falls, through the Five Spring Campground. And this is Five Springs Campground Road, where you would turn off at this intersection. There's a sign here that shows to get to the Five Springs Falls Campground, or you would go this way to go up to the Medicine Wheel. That's where the semicolon is in the poem. It's describing that precise location where you would turn and go back up into the canyon. Because there's only one way in this canyon for all intents and purposes, unless you intended to skydive or rappel down the side of a mountain. The only way you're getting in there is by coming up this way. Okay, this is that red line going over that same campground. You would park here, and then there's a trail that leads all the way up to the waterfalls, which are over here. Campsite number 9 is right over here. It's the closest campsite to the Marvel Gaze. So this is where the blaze would intersect the campsite. And basically, when he says, but tarry scant with Marvel Gaze, if you were to draw a perpendicular line right at that point where the sun crosses over the marker for campsite number 9, and you follow that perpendicular line across the stream, it'll take you right to the nook that we show. And here's a brighter screenshot of what's going on there. This is zoomed in a little bit more. This is coming out of the canyon. There's a gigantic rock side here. These are your heavy loads all down here. And you can see campsite number 9 begins over here. And this is where the omega tree is that I end up showing. This will be the perpendicular line that sends you right over here, which is where the treasure chest was on the opposite side of the creek. These are the signs at that intersection. This road goes up to the medicine wheel. But if you were to make a left here, facing this direction, this is what takes you to Five Springs Falls Campground. Heavy loads and water high. It's up in that direction. And there's a sign here, and I show you all this in my full sob if you want to go and read it. There's much more information in that video, and I don't want to replicate it here. But this is basically where you would turn to drive to the place that you're going to walk from. So, in other words, that's how you would get to the foot in. This is another sign that you would see down there, Five Springs Falls Lower Campground. The lower campground is the one that we're going to. The upper campground is not where we go. That's actually where there's a broken blaze, but I'm not going to discuss that here. This is the sign that you would see when you arrive at the lower campground, and then you would pull in here, and this is the lower loop, and then there's another upper loop and once you get into the canyon up there, and that's where you would go to campsite number 9 up in that direction. The first 7 campsites are down at the lower loop, and then the other 2 you would have to follow the trail to get to campsite 8 and campsite 9, which is the furthest one north. Remember, there's 9 clues in the poem also. When you park in the upper loop, this is a trail. This way would take you to campsite 8 and 9. In this canyon is where the waterfall is, and the sun would come down this way. You can also walk this way because these 2 trails meet, and they meet right at the place over here where you're going to go into campsite number 9 as the sun would come down through. This is the warning sign that you would see at the trail up there. That's just before you go into campsite number 9. Five Springs Falls Trail, not maintained beyond this point. Travel at your own risk. Falling rocks. When you get to that campsite, if you were to draw that perpendicular line I talked about, this is the marker for campsite number 9. It would take you right in there, and it goes right over where the double omega tree is. This is what you would see. You would pitch the tent over here. There's a fire pit over here, and then there's a picnic table. This is the closest campsite to the waterfalls, which is the Marble Gaze. This is a place that you would go to tarry scamp. In this picture, we moved up closer. Here's that rock over here. Here's the fire pit. Here's the picnic table. This is a double omega tree. If you look through these trees right down on the other side, about 50 feet as the crow flies, 50 or 60 feet from this picnic table, is where the treasure chest is in the nook. You would not see it from here. You would have to walk to the edge. Also, a lot of the overgrowth is gone because this picture wasn't taken during the search season. That's a friend of mine that went boots on the ground. These pictures were taken a couple of months after the chest was found in 2020. They were taken. He basically, all of this wood that's surrounding here is dogwood, and he removed it so that he could look into the nook. This is the creek coming down Five Springs Creek. There's like a mini waterfall over here on the left, and the creek comes down this way, and this is on the opposite side. Underneath this tree is also shaped like an omega, but it's damaged naturally. I guess it was hit by lightning or something, and it busted off one of the arms on the omega. The only way to see this is to be standing directly over it. Otherwise, you're not going to notice that it's omega. There's nothing on the other side here. This nook goes in like 2 or 3 feet. There's no cave. There's no water back here. This is all a cliff. There's no trails. There's no human trails anywhere near. The closest trail would be about 60 feet away on the campsite. That zoomed in a little bit more. By the way, I took a picture of the stick that was inside the chest and overlaid it on here. You can see them all over the place in here. There are aspen trees, cottonwood, and mostly lodgepole pine all over the place. You can see them going under in the wood here, under the tree. This is all wood from the tree. And down here is the nook. If you're standing above and looking into through the tree, you probably could have seen the top of the chest. This is he basically stood up and he took a step back, and this is under that tree. You can see this area is still compressed. He took all the rocks. Somebody basically took whatever was in here out, and they filled it in with rocks and other debris. But this is about 1 foot by 1 foot and probably about 8 inches deep or so. If the chest was in there, and this is pitched down a little bit, the only way you would see it is if you were looking straight down between this tree and the one on the other side, or you walked right up to it, like we are here, and removed the dogwood. If you were a kid, there's a spot you could have crawled underneath the tree and stuck your head, and you would have seen the chest by the time your head was over here. But you could clearly see it. I'll zoom in a little bit, and you can see what I'm talking about. The way these rocks were, and this area goes back, that's clearly big enough to fit the treasure chest in there. That is a real nook. I think there was also a rock on top of everything, but we have no way of knowing what was there because the chest was gone. This is what the hole looked like when it was all filled in with debris and rocks and stuff like that across here. He basically removed all this garbage that somebody threw in there. And like I said, it's interesting because the bottom is compacted. It wouldn't be compacted flat like that if all this stuff was in there to begin with. Now I just want to show you some video footage. This is stepping off the platform where the picnic table and the fire pit are, and then there's a trail out here that leads up, like I said, if you were going to go around here and go up to the falls. This is the opposite side of the double omega tree. Again, my friends took this picture. This is a few months after the chest was found in 2020.
Here is one of the trees here at campsite number 9, which is right there. And then you just walk down to right here, and that's where that's hidden.
So right here is where the nook is. Here's an aspen tree, but it's on the other side of the creek, and you could see it from above if you look through the omega tree. That's where he found the nook, and that's where he was clearing it out. It was literally straight underneath the wood, underneath this omega tree. That's one of the videos I wanted to show you. I want to show you a couple of drone footage just to give you an idea of what the outside looked like. I did not show this in my solution video. Okay, this is drone footage that's going to look inside of where the waterfall is and stuff like that as soon as he pans the camera. Again, this was taken a few months after the treasure chest was found. This is how tight that canyon wall is. The beam of sunlight shine right through here, okay? So that red line that I was showing you before would come right through here, right over this rock slide, and right into the area where campsite number 9 and the nook is. So you look how tight that is. But this is looking up in there. So he's panned down a little bit, like I said, campsite number 9, all that. There's the waterfall. You can see the water coming down. And eventually he'll pan up. And if you were standing down at campsite number 9, which is not where he is, again, the sun would be like right above this point and coming right through here. You can kind of see some of the top of the hill over there. There's no way somebody's going to get down inside here. You can see the waterfall back there. And now, of course, you can watch the drone footage. It's on my site. He basically goes in there and he spins around. I'm not going to show the whole thing right now. Okay, this drone footage, now we're on the top. The drone is up in the air. The waterfall cuts down through here. The sun, you see this weird looking rock over here? Probably about 10 feet tall. The sun would come down right over that. Okay, basically. Right over here and right through that tight canyon wall. And it would essentially light up the area where campsite number 9 is and the nook, which would be on the left. And here's that rock slide that I just showed you. All of this, if you were here on solstice, would all be in the shadow, and so would this. But the sun would come right down over the top of this, right down through here, right down to the road that you have to put in to get to the campsite, and then of course into Rainbow Canyon. So I'll play it a little bit more. I don't want to again play the whole thing. This is on my channel if you want to go see the full version. You can see the waterfall right here animating, and there's a little waterfall here. The waterfall trail basically ends down here where there's a small waterfall. You could climb up that waterfall and come around, and you could come in this area where the big fall is. We believe that the sheep eaters would do that back in the day. They would come in here when they left the mountains to seek shelter during the winter, and they would stay down here because there's only one way in. They could see where the enemy's coming from. They have access to water, and they're isolated from the wind and stuff like that somewhat. Now, if you listen to Forrest Fenn in TTOTC, when he talks about looking for Lewis and Clark, he talks about using the mountain man wisdom and finding the sun. Then he looked to the south. He seen the largest big mountain they couldn't go over, but they found the fastest moving creek or stream and they followed it down. They reached a point where only the water can go. They could see their destination, but only the water could go. So they had to backtrack all the way back up, come down a Forest Service road, and come in from the bottom to get home. So you can see this is actually pretty beautiful down here. They got the fall here. There's a waterfall here. This is like 200 feet. You can't really tell from here. It's like 200 feet tall. So there, and there's another fall up there. There's no way that anybody could follow up Five Springs Creek down here. Okay. And again, the sun would be coming right across here. This video was shot late in the day, so the sun is in the southwest, pointing to the northeast. It would be the opposite, obviously, during the solstice. This, I'll stop the camera when it gets right where the sun would be. Approximately like that. It would come right down here, right over the edge of that, and right down through that tight canyon and right over campsite number 9. That's why he says you got to look quickly. Obviously, you don't need to be there on the solstice day. That was the hint that the sun moves, okay? As soon as it rises, it's going to start moving southeast. So the shadows and the sunlight's going to change, right? So it's kind of like an Indiana Jones thing where you have to be there. You look quickly down because the sun moves, and you're looking down because the sun's in the sky. But you're looking for the place at where the sun meets the spot that you tarry scant with the marble gaze. Perpendicular line from there on the topographical map takes you directly to that nook. So that's basically it. He shows a little bit more footage in here. Underneath these canyon walls, there's all nooks that were carved in there by the natives, kind of like they did in Mesa Verde and stuff like that. They would carve in there so they could go under the canyon and they would get even more help, I guess, from the snow and the rain and stuff like that. And also below these trees, all of that. On both sides, there's nooks all around in here. Sam Smith actually believes that Forrest Fenn either discovered something in here or he might have discovered something up above. Sam also said his family did come here in the 30s before they used to, his father at one point would stop here and bring him the wheel. When he did, that road, and I don't know how the hell Sam found that out. I have no links or anything, and Sam passed away last May, so I don't have that information. I can't prove to you that Forrest here was here with his family. But according to Sam, he was a few times. And then I believe he also probably came back with some of the archaeologists he liked hanging around with because they were into the bighorns, especially George Fry's. So again, you can see the tight canyon wall over here where the sun would come through. And again, there's that rock slide, and campsite number 9 would be over there. Like I said, this will give you a perspective of, remember, the sun is shining from behind the camera. It'll be coming right down this way. And obviously, this drone is high in the sky. These are really big trees, as you've seen when we were on the ground. You can see the trails here that lead up to there, and campsite number 9 is over there. And like I said, you got to go on the other side to get to the nook. You got to cross the stream. The stream is basically in the middle of these trees. There's the upper loop, and there's the lower loop. This is all the lower campground, and it's the only way to get into that canyon without skydiving, parachuting, or rappelling down the wall. There is cell service in this area. There's also a maintenance building here, and over here, cows graze. Okay. That's why they have a cow grate or a cow fence to prevent the cattle from leaving this area. They'll stay in here and graze. Uh, so there is power here in the cell service. There may even be Wi-Fi. I don't know. And you can see wires over here. These wires are going up to a radio station that's at Medicine Mountain Peak and right where the radar dome is. Now, you want to talk about a marvel gaze? I'll show you one right now. It's a little bit hazy out, but right here, when you're looking out from way, these are the Absaroka Mountains. Yellowstone is over there. Cody is roughly over here, I believe. Lovell is up here. Um, the Owl Creek Mountains, if you look to the left, you can see them, and on a clear day, you can even see the Grand Tetons. So from here, you can see all of the places that Forrest Fenn describes, including up in Montana and all of these mountains that he talked about. Okay. And this is the basin, of course. This is the road that you would put in right here, leads up to the campground. That's where the signs are down here at this road. And this is Rainbow Canyon. So when the sun comes out, goes right over the intersection, right into Rainbow Canyon. There's an overlook over here. You can't get to the overlook by going this way because this is private property. You'd have to come up around this way. But this is all BLM land in here. We're right on the edge of the forest border. The forest border is right at the waterfalls we just went over. So that's really all I wanted to show here. I want to keep this video as short as I can. It's longer than I want it to be because I'm putting this video and pictures in here, but I didn't include the video in the other one. I wanted to have everything kind of in one place. If you want more information, just check out the video that's at the end here, and it'll describe things in much more detail than I do here. But that's pretty much it. It's as straightforward as you could be. All I required is the phone and a map of the area that we're at. No backstory. I don't have to know about Forrest Fenn's life. Um, and just like Forrest Fenn said in Goldenmore, he wanted to give the reason why he did the chase. He says it right there. I did it to give people a chance to experience what I did building my collection. And as we know, his collection started with his first arrowhead. As we know, Forrest Fenn's house is surrounded by Plains Indian artifacts. Well, the area that I just showed you is the most sacred place for all of those Plains Indian tribes in the United States. So they have a lot of spiritualism tied to that. That's where they go for healing, and some of them believe that's where the dead spirits go. That's where you go to communicate it. If you read the kiosk there, they even describe it as cold and dark, and you're alone, and it's just between you and the spirits. So there you go, folks. Straightforward as can be. I showed you the poem tells you where to go, so you know that you're at the right where warm water salt. Once you find that wheel and you use all the clues at the wheel using the wheel documentation, everything fits nicely right into Five Springs. Everything is using the root word five. Five Springs Basin, Five Springs Creek, Five Springs Canyon, Five Springs Falls, Five Springs Campground, Five Springs Road. Everything is Five Springs. That's why he was able to use the word the canyon, and so on, and the blaze, because there's a lot of blazes. There would be a blaze, would be the marker to the road. We got the sun, and there was also likely a blaze right on top of the chest. We don't know that. My opinion is Forrest Fenn moved the chest or had it moved by somebody because he wanted to call off the chase. And at the time when he moved it, nobody had the right solve sent to him, including me and Sam, because it was not. I told Forrest Fenn that we were going to Five Springs, but first we're going to go to Sam's places, and I told them we're going on June 6th, 2020. But I told them I didn't have Five Springs figured out yet. I did not figure out Five Springs until June 8th. So by the time we were able to get to Five Springs, it was already too late. So if Jack did find it here, he found it legitimately. He basically solved the ending before we did. And that's where we are today. But I do believe this is the correct solution. And that's why we have the solution out there. It's been published by us and since way back 2016. And prior to that, I have emails that went back and forth between Forrest and Sam Smith about the wheel. And when Sam Smith and his wife were here, I believe in 2014, and they stayed here for a week or two. That was his boots on the ground. Sam Smith was in his 70s. He couldn't go boots on the ground that much. Okay. But he did. So that's it, folks. I hope you enjoy this. I hope it's shorter than the other one. And it certainly has a lot of cool pictures for you to see. So I'll talk to you later. Peace.